Good morning, all. Please join us for our opening song, We Give Thanks. Carl, there you go. Good morning. My name is Carl Tramontana, and welcome to the online services of the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Danbury. We're very happy that you're here. Some of you may be traveling and listening in on your way home from Thanksgiving. Hopefully, everybody's home nice and warm today. We're so glad that you're here with us this morning, and together in community, we can ensure that social distancing does not mean social disengagement. So our weekly services are more than just gathering of our physical body. It is the forming of a sacred time that we make together. My name is Carl Tramontana. I've been a member of this congregation since 2005, along with my wife Nancy and our daughter Julie, who is the first of the Tramontana family to be born into Unitarian Universalism, which we are very happy for her and for ourselves to have joined way back in 2005 when we moved up to Brewster, New York in 2003 from Long Island. I help out a lot around the congregation. I'm a member of the Saved Congregation team, and I also help out with building and services and any other thing that the congregation might need. You probably see me around also filling in on the piano at times. Whether you are well versed in technology of teleconferencing or this is your first venture, we welcome you. For those of you new among us or reconnecting with fonder hearts, we invite you to introduce yourselves and where you're coming from in the chat box as you're comfortable. Whatever the faith and traditions of your past, whatever your theological stance, whatever your heritage, whoever you are and whomever you love, we welcome you. You can learn more about us on our website and Facebook page. And we encourage you to share our Facebook page and reach out to others who may be isolated during this time and might benefit from the spiritual connection within our loving community. Just a few quick announcements. Today, we welcome Reverend Sunshine Wolf as our guest speaker. Reverend Sunshine is a congregational life staff for the UUA Central East region, which UUCD is affiliated with. And of course, he'll introduce himself shortly. And just a quick update about our auction, Against All Odds, which I think is a really interesting name this year. We're seeking matching donations for the auction. The matching donation program allows everyone to participate. Any contribution, I was going to say conscription. I was thinking about prohibition, excuse me. Any contribution, no matter how small, helps. Just contact Eva DeFranco, and you'll find her email in your order of service with your contribution. And More importantly, also calling all UUCD visual artists. If you are a visual artist and would like to share some of your artwork with us, we are looking for winter holiday themed images to include in our first ever UUCD Zoom holiday concert on December 20th at 3 p.m. Please email your artwork to Jerry Phelps, and his email is also in the announcements, music director at uucddanbury.org by December 8th, 2020. Once again, we thank you for joining us today. We will now have our opening words from Reverend Sunshine.
Good morning, everyone. As mentioned, my name is Reverend Sunshine Jeremiah Wolf. I am field staff with the Central East region. I serve most of Ohio and all of Western Pennsylvania UU congregations and do a number of other things. And it's a great privilege to be here today. I am good friends with Reverend Heather and with Reverend Kathy and their family, and was really honored when Reverend Heather said, "Hey, would you be willing to preach in Danbury?" And it's also great to be with you. I've been watching the John Oliver communiques about Danbury over the past year, and I've learned a lot about your fair town through that. So whatever your opinions may be, I think folks have learned a lot about your community and the beautiful things you do there. So I am transgender and genderqueer, and so I use they, them, theirs. I don't mind if you slip up. In fact, please don't apologize, just fix it. If people apologized every time they slipped up, we'd only be apologizing. So just keep practicing, that's all we ask. And I want to share these words this morning from Reverend Sean Parker Dennison, who's a colleague out in Oregon. He shared this with a group of ministers some years ago, and I find it inspiring to think about who we can be as a people. Reverend Parker says, Sean Parker Dennison says this: "I long for us to be claimed by a mission that is bold and huge and daring. Maybe Unitarian Universalists show up. Wherever there is a need, a crisis, a cry for justice, or for a supportive presence, Unitarian Universalists would show up. We wouldn't have to lead. We wouldn't have to plan long-term strategy sessions. We just show up wherever we are needed or whenever we are asked. Imagine our reputation. If you need people to clean up a creek bed, or march in a pride parade, or protest injustice, or help protect Muslim worshipers at prayer, call the Unitarian Universalists. They show up." And now we will have our chalice lighting with Michael Stengel.
We'll now light our chalices. If you have a chalice or candle to light, I invite you to do so safely now, and then we will join together in our chalice lighting affirmation. Love is the spirit of this congregation, and justice is its light. This is our covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek and speak the truth in love, to help one another, and celebrate life. Now Sierra Marie will lead us in our children's affirmation.
That's right. So, good morning. It is good to be together. If there are any children or youth who are in the room but not near the screen, I invite you to come over now so that you can be present for the Reverend Sunshine's story. And while you're on your way over, I will share with you that today in religious education, when the adults go into their fellowship time, their breakout rooms right after the service, we'll go over to the religious education Zoom room and have our own coffee hour sharing circle and engage a spiritual practice and some time for chatting and sharing our joys and sorrows. And then following that, we have a teen-led workshop for younger kids on origami folding. We'll learn 16 different ways to fold paper into origami shapes. So that should be a lot of fun. Please join us for either or both of those events. They're in the same Zoom room. I also want to share with you that we have additional words for our children's affirmation today. So the Reverend Sunshine has brought a few additional lines that some congregations say, or a couple additional lines that some congregations say. So after we say helping hands and hold out our hands, we'll also say we care for the earth, and we'll make an earth shape with our hands, and each other, we care for each other. So we'll put we'll stretch our arms out as if we're reaching out for each other. Let's say our children's affirmation together now. We are Unitarian Universalists. We are people with open minds, loving hearts, and helping hands. We care for the earth and each other. And I am really looking forward to hearing this story now from Reverend Sunshine.
Well, this story is about a little girl named Amanda, and Amanda really liked to help people. How many of y'all just can raise your hand in your screen like to help people? Anybody? Anybody enjoy doing that? Amanda absolutely loved doing it. She helped her Papa David and her Poppy Caesar to clean the house. She raked up the leaves in her neighbor Jim's yard when he was in pain and couldn't do it himself. And she toured her friend Sarah in math because she was really good at math. And Sarah was way better at geometry or geography and would help her with that. So when it came time for her class to do a project to help people in her hometown, she was so excited. And she couldn't wait for that day. And finally, Teacher Mike said he was going to assign all of the students a project. And he told Amanda that what he wanted her to do was to help the people in Walden who were in the poorer part of the town she lived in. Her job was to help the people there who were hungry. He said, you can do any type of service project you like, but I want you to help those who are hungry. Amanda couldn't wait. She thought all day about what she could do. And when she got home, she told Papa David and Poppy Caesar about the project. I want to make sandwiches and take them to the people who are hungry. So Papa David and Poppy Caesar and her neighbor Jim and her friend Sarah got together and they made 100 sandwiches. Can you imagine making 100 sandwiches? And in the bags they put sandwiches and they put an apple, and she created some little drawings and put that inside. Whole bunch of stuff, right? So it took a lot of time. She was super excited about going out and helping people. So the next day, Poppy Caesar drove her out to Walden, and she and Poppy Caesar walked around and tried to offer people sandwiches, but nobody would take the sandwich. She'd offer them to various people and say, here, I have this food. Would you like it? And no, I already ate. Thank you. I'm good. And she was getting a little downhearted because she had put all this effort in and nobody wanted to take her food. And as she's walking down the street with Poppy Caesar, she sees this little girl who's sitting on a porch step, just kind of watching her. And so she walks over, a little curious, and says to the girl, would you like a sandwich? And the little girl looked at her for a moment, kind of tilted her head confused and said, aren't you going to ask my name? Amanda was a little embarrassed. Oh, I'm sorry. My name is Amanda. What is your name? Well, my name is Tiny. This name was clearly appropriate because the little girl was quite tiny. Why are you handing out sandwiches? Well, it's a class project. I was asked to help those who are hungry here in Walden. So my Papa David and Poppy Caesar and Jim and Sarah and I made sandwiches to give everyone. And Tiny laughed. Like, not a small laugh, but like a kind of laugh. Now, I don't know about you, but if I were trying to help someone and then they started laughing at me, that might not feel so good, right? And so, Amanda was feeling a little bit upset, and Tiny laughed and said, well, we get hungry here sometimes, but we never take food from strangers. Some of my neighbors go to the soup kitchen every evening, but we're not going to take food from strangers. And so Amanda was confused, and she said, well, my teacher told us to go out and help people who are hungry, and so I'm doing that and I'm wanting to help, but nobody seems to want this. And Tiny says, well, like I said, we take food sometimes, but really never from strangers. Your teacher really asked you to help people who are hungry? Amanda sat there for a second and she was getting more angry and more frustrated and confused. I imagine you can understand how she felt. And finally she said, well, fine. Well, what would you do then? And Tiny, realizing that Amanda was upset, stopped laughing and got very serious and said, so you really want to help us? And Amanda nodded, but she was too mad, so she didn't say anything because, you know, sometimes when you're mad, you're going to say that thing that isn't helpful, and she didn't want to do that. And Tiny said, well, we have a garden that the city gave us. They gave us seeds, but most of the seeds were bad or not food that any of us will be able to eat, like turnips. Ugh, who needs 1,000 turnip seeds? And at that, Amanda laughed. And Tiny explained that what they really needed were healthy seeds for foods her community would eat, and tools to help dig up the land and water for the garden. And Tiny said that if Amanda really wanted to help, she could get her class and her dads and her friends to write letters to city council asking that a grocery store be put in the neighborhood, because the closest one was 45 minutes away by bus. Tiny and Amanda talked for a long time, and not just about the needs of Walden. They both like to jump rope, and they like to sing songs and make bird calls. And Poppy Caesar spent time chatting with Tiny's mom, and soon the two families were friends. Amanda decided that her project instead would be to ask her church and her class at school and her family and her friends to come down to Walden and ask the people what they need. They helped the community get the tools and seeds for the garden and shared in a big harvest meal in the fall. And it would take a long, long time, but eventually they would help get a grocery store in Walden. They had a big festival to celebrate their success together. Amanda learned a big lesson that day. She learned that you cannot decide what people need help with. You have to ask them what they need you to do and then do that. She also learned that sometimes if you ask a stranger what they need, you might just make a friend. The end. So, is this when the kids go off to the thing?
Sorry. You were moving straight into your reflections from this point, correct? From
Yeah.
the story. Go
Mhm.
ahead then. You are most welcome to move right
Okay.
into that.
All right, great. Yes. Yay. All right, so I don't know how many folks find this story familiar. Have you ever gone and helped someone and realized that the thing you were doing wasn't the thing that they really needed? Or maybe someone's done that for you. They thought they were being helpful and they really weren't. And maybe they were asking you questions or wanting to do things and, just wasn't quite there. Many of us grew up with this thing called the golden rule. Everybody know what the golden rule is? The golden rule is do unto others as they would have you, or as you would have them do unto you, right? This story goes a little bit further into what we call the platinum rule. And the platinum rule says, do unto others as they would have you do unto them. It's a step further. It says that we don't all necessarily want or need the same things. And because we're so different and we live in such different places and in different worlds, we can't possibly know what other people need. So we actually have to ask. So my partner, when he's having a bad day, really likes hugs and cuddles and, doing things together. That makes him feel better. I like to hide in my office and be alone and be an introvert and don't want to be around people. And so we have very different needs when we're having a bad day. And if he tried to treat me the way he wants to be treated, I would just get mad. And the same thing the other way. Well, it's the same thing with the things that we do to help. We're so often taught that our job is to be charitable, to give unto others, and that is absolutely true. And we also have to assume we don't know what other people need. There's a song that I love by Shoshana Jadweb, Where You Go, I Will Go, Beloved. It goes like this. Where you go, I will go, beloved. Where you go, I will go. Where you go, I will go, beloved. Where you go, I will go. For your people are my people. Your people are mine. Your people are my people. Your divine, my divine. Where you go, I will go, beloved, for your people are my people, and your divine, my divine. And it isn't saying that we all have to be the same. It's saying that we go there together, not the direction each of us thinks we should go, but the places we choose to go together. And if we go back to that opening reading from Sean Parker Dennison, he says, what if Unitarian Universalists are known as the people who show up? And what I hear in that is, what if rather than we decide we're going to do this social action project or this thing, we join in with others? How many of you participated in Black Lives Matter stuff this summer? Yeah, that was us showing up and doing what was asked of us. Whether you were on the phone calling your congressman or whether you were marching in the streets, however you might have shown up in that way, it was a way in which we said, we're going to be here not because of something we know, but because of something we know others know and what they need from us to do. And so it's a part of our justice work really clearly, not just to do what others are asking of us, to actively be in community. I think about that last line of that story. Sometimes if you ask another person what they need, you might just make a friend. You know, if we start forging relationships between communities of difference, we actually create the world we dream about. We create the things that we want to see, and we become our best selves. Now, there is one really important and particularly difficult task when we start to engage in the work of asking people who are not from our worlds and not from our communities what they need of us. And that is that we have to live into what we don't know. Now, I love Unitarian Universalism. I have been a UU religious professional for 20 years, ordained minister for 8. Y'all are my people and I am yours for sure. And one of our challenges is we can sometimes be a little bit of a heady lot. We tend to be a little bit intellectual and focus on the things that we know. Not everybody, but many of us. And the tricky thing with really connected justice work is we have to lean into what we don't know. We have to take at the heart of it that we don't really know what to do here. If we knew how to heal our world, we would have done it already. It would have already been finished. There is so much energy that goes into caring for our planet and each other and doing this important work. We put so much in it, it would have been fixed. It isn't grounded in what we know. In fact, much of what we need to discover about how we help each other and heal our world is in the realm of what we don't know. And I love Reverend Julica de la Fuente is one of my colleagues. If you ever get to hear Reverend Julica speak, go do it. Like, I swear to you, she's brilliant. And she puts up this pie graph and she marks off about 1/8 of it and says, this is the stuff you know. And then she does another maybe 4/4 of it and says, this is the stuff you don't know, right? Like, I know physics is out there, but I don't know much about physics, right? Other than gravity happens, that's about it. So I know there's a lot there I don't know. But then the whole rest of the pie, which is almost 3/4 of it, is the stuff we don't know that we don't know. It's the things outside of our experience. It's the things that are beyond our capacity to understand. And the thing that she points out is that for most of us, we can only spend a little bit of time in that space. And it gets too uncomfortable. It gets scary. I know, at least as a transgender person, folks who have never met someone who's transgender, consciously met someone who's transgender, because almost everybody's met someone who's transgender and didn't know it. But when they consciously meet someone, people get uncertain and uncomfortable and they say things that they probably wouldn't normally say in all of this. And it's because they're not practiced at being in places where they don't know what's going on, or they don't know the experience of the person in front of them. And it's honestly, I think that we have to practice. So I'll close the first part of the sermon by sharing, I'm not going to quote it because it's too much, but Jewish philosopher named Emmanuel Levinas, who was one of those folks who could take a paragraph to write one sentence. So I don't recommend reading it unless you're really, really dedicated. But there's a key thing that he wrote about. He said that when you are speaking to another person, or when you're communicating with another person, and you start to understand them not for how you think, but for how they think. So you really start to think in a different and new way and understand that perspective, that in that moment, that's where God lives. And maybe one of the only places where God lives. Now, I know I'm not a theist. I don't believe in God, but what I take from that is that's where the sacred moments happen. That's where transformation occurs. That's where there is power and hope and strength, is in the moments when we can really hear something that is beyond our own experience. But it takes time and it takes practice. And we'll come back to that part in the second part of the sermon.
Please join in the spirit of meditation and compassionate attention as we enter into our time of community sharing. You're invited to use the chat window of Zoom for the sharing of deep sorrows and joys this morning. You may also wish to recognize the sharing of joys and sorrows by silently dropping a stone in a bowl or lighting a candle. Let us now share with one another.
It is now time for our congregational offering. If you're with us for the first time, feel free to pass the virtual plate. Your presence here in the Zoom room is your gift to us. Members, please click the link on your screen in the chat to make a donation or pledge. For even though we are not in our beloved fellowship hall, our operating expenses are still the same. You may also mail a check to UUCD at 24 Clapboard Ridge Road in Danbury. Thank you for doing your part to support and sustain this community we love. Now please join me in our congregational response. In the spirit of compassion and service, we dedicate these, our offerings.
Good morning. My name is James Russell, and I've composed a funny song about turkey leftovers. Our Thanksgiving was wonderful, but we cooked too much turkey. So we stuffed the fridge like the Brooklyn Bridge. That was quite a feat. Now turkey greets our eyes when we look inside. We've tried every recipe, hoping to disguise. Leftover turkey is a meal for today. Breakfast and dinner too, it won't go away. So I pray every day, leftover turkey go away. Our Thanksgiving was wonderful, but we cooked too much to eat. So we stuffed the fridge like the Brooklyn Bridge. It was quite a feat. When we look inside, turkey greets our eyes. We've tried every recipe, hoping to disguise. Leftover turkey is a meal for today. Breakfast and dinner too, it won't go away. So I pray every day, let leftover turkey go away. I've had enough turkey stuff, even with marshmallow fluff. But now there's no escaping turkey leftovers.
That was fun and fabulous. Thank you so much. I want to share a reading. If you've heard of the Commission on Institutional Change report that came out from the UUA this past summer, that talks about how we counter white supremacy culture and oppression in our communities and the cultures of our communities. Recently, we came out with a study guide for that. And in that study guide are a bunch of great questions, but there's also some really powerful readings and things to connect with. And so this is one of the readings from that. It's written by Reverend Marta Valentin, who's one of our UUA staff who works with ministers in formation. And Reverend Marta writes, "Spirit of compassion. Isn't it amazing how we crave to know an outcome before it's time, even as we accept that we cannot know how anything will go? We do not know if the mounds of obstacles will become dirt cleared away or earth made into a mountain. We do not know if fresh air will degenerate into a stagnant suffocation or be sucked out of lives longing to breathe freely and easily. If the deserts will spring a true oasis or continue to offer a false vision of survival. If the shores will be flowing invitations into unfathomable freedoms or a fearfully ebbed withdrawal of even the tiniest hospitality. We who walk on ground taken for granted, we who speak of an earth that has no borders, ask for guidance as we aid those in need, as well as those who would obstruct our care. Spirit of compassion, strengthen our resolve to carry forth this ministry, regardless of the reality of the decisions made to seemingly thwart our efforts. Let us, in one grounded body, strong in our Unitarian Universalist faith, in solidarity with those whose lives are most at stake, resolve never to give up this fight for them, nor for our country. Let ours be the voices that demand a true accounting of these legal human beings. Let ours be the hearts that resolve, whether through light or dark times, to stay the course, no matter what, no matter how long. Let our love be the kind they have been waiting for. Let our love be the kind they have been waiting for. So in the second part of the sermon today, I want to continue with thinking about that, embracing what we do not know that we do not know. And the thing about understanding the things that we do not know is that we have to be willing and intentionally move into experiences and spaces that are not our own. I know in this house I've been introducing my partner to Spike Lee. And if you've never encountered Spike Lee's work before, it can be a bit of a challenge the first time through. And even for folks from New York City, I think there's this notion of you can live your life in New York City and have no connection with what the Black experience in New York City is like. And Spike Lee's movies and whatnot enter into that unabashedly and unquestionably, right? And so it's been interesting having these conversations with my partner who's really never gone through any of these works of like, what happened there? I don't understand this, or that's new to me, right? And yet that act of going through and experiencing things that are completely outside of experience means that when he encounters some things now online, he's like, oh, that's what that means, or that's why they said that, because he's now experienced something in a new way. And that was just through a movie, right? You don't have to go into, as the case with Amanda, and to Walden to actually encounter difference, right? You can go into all kinds of places to do this. But however you do it, you have to choose to do it. It's easy to stay comfortable, right? I don't know about you, but I love being comfortable. I love just staying in my house, eating foods, not talking. I'm an introvert. So it's super easy for me to want to just stay comfortable in my house and not get engaged with the world. But that's not where growth happens. And somebody had posted earlier that part of how they create justice and compassion in their communities is they continue to be learners. They continue to recognize that even in the age of 60 or 70, that they're still learning new things. And I think that's what we're all called to do. And not just learn, but experience, be uncomfortable with new ideas and new ways of being. I think that that's what we as Unitarian Universalists are called to do. And really, if we think about the principles of our faith that say we need not think alike to love alike, I actually would take that a step further and say we don't all love alike. We have different experiences of love. And part of our job is to actually be willing to embrace and give people the kinds of love that they are asking for and needing, and recognize that their experience of love may be completely different. And when we engage in that, we find some new way to be with our faith and with our values as Unitarian Universalists. all of this requires humility and practice, right? The humility to recognize that I may be an expert in my field, I may have a college degree, I may have been doing this job for 50 years. I still don't know a whole lot. And I'm going to have humility in the lives and experiences of the people that I come across. In addition to being transgender, I'm also Indigenous. I'm Eastern Cherokee and Seminole. And frequently I will meet people who I'll tell them that I'm Eastern Cherokee and Seminole, and they will then start to tell me the history of my people, everything they know about the history of Indigenous peoples, the Eastern Cherokee, whatever comes to their mind. And what I've started to learn is that that is a reaction to the fact that they don't understand or know my experience. They're going to go to what they do know, because that feels safe and comfortable when meeting somebody like me who doesn't match, I think, probably what they think an Indigenous person looks like or ought to be. And so there's an uncertainty. And when we're in that uncertain place, we go to the things we know. The practice actually of humility requires we go the opposite direction, to the things we don't know, and to let go of the things we know. And that can be hard to do. And that's where practice comes in. And practice requires two things: repetition and time. When folks are learning new words, for example, so with pronouns or with learning a new way of speaking, it takes practice. You have to keep doing it over and over and over and over again. It also takes time. Your brain requires time to forge new neurons, new connections, to refire in new ways. It doesn't happen overnight. Our brains are not meant to just instantly change. They build over time. And so we have to practice being in those uncomfortable places, trying those new things, going towards that platinum rule of treating others as they would have us treat them involves constant practice and attention, and knowing that we may never arrive, but that isn't the goal. We're not meant to become perfect human beings, perfectly aware, perfectly arrived at whatever imaginary goal of a just and righteous world. We are meant to be whole and wholly connected. Whole and wholly connected. And so perhaps the greatest gift we can give to justice work is not just showing up, but committing again and again and again to connection, especially when it is hard. We have a number of congregations who are approving the 8th principle. Has anybody heard of the 8th principle? Any of that? Yeah. I'm going to read it out loud just so we hear it once. And it's not in its final form by any means, but it's good enough, right? It says, we, the member congregations of the Unitarian Universalist Association, covenant to affirm and promote journeying towards spiritual wholeness by working to build a diverse and multicultural beloved community by our actions that accountably dismantle racism and other oppressions in ourselves and our institutions. And if you couldn't remember all that, that's okay. It is now in your chat box. So, some things I love about it. By our actions. I love our principles, but they don't ask us to actually do anything. We just have to affirm and promote it. And you can affirm and promote a whole lot without doing anything, right? And it asks to pay attention to how oppression impacts us, but also the systems of which we are a part. The cool thing about the 8th principle is it may not be the final form, but by approving it, a lot of our congregations are then tasked with, okay, we have approved this, now how do we do it? And we have, I think at this point, around 40 congregations who have voted officially to support the 8th principle. We have more who are voting this year. It's an ongoing process. And one of the people who helped create it, Paula Cole-Jones, who used to be on the Central East Region staff team, is now on the commission that's reviewing all of our principles again, and will be putting new set before us here in a couple of years. And this will certainly be a part of it. And there are questions that are really alive right now. So right now we're talking about this being an 8th principle, but what would happen if it ended up being the 1st principle? You know, what would happen if we said this is the foundation of all the things we're doing? and that other things are possible. I'm not saying we will, but asking those questions invites us into new ways of thinking, practicing and trying new things. I love Paula. Paula's one of my favorite human beings. She's definitely a mentor of mine. So glad she was with you. So there's these new ways of thinking that we're invited to. And just simply by asking questions and practicing and doing, we learn new ways and we discover new solutions and we find things that we never knew were possible. I want to close with that song I was singing earlier. Where you go, I will go, beloved. Where you go, I will go. Where you go, I will go, beloved. Committing to doing this 8th principle work and countering white supremacy culture and inviting ourselves into justice work that it requires that we show up in new ways is about going with our beloveds, with all of the beloveds in our communities, those that are a part of our congregations and our families, and those who are not. It is about being with in all the messiness and complexity and in the ways that we can. Not everybody can march. Nobody is saying that showing up means you have to be in the streets. Nobody, and right now you really shouldn't be. I just tell you as your minister, you should not be in the streets right now. You should just stay home, be there. That's it, right? But there's so much you can do to show up. You know, how many of you participated in the You the Vote, made phone calls or sent text messages? We had lots of folks who did that. When I was living in Ferguson, I lived in the Ferguson area when Michael Brown was murdered. And a lot of our folks were folks who answered the phones when folks called for a bail help or for a lawyer or for legal assistance or questions around where they should go next. You don't have to be in the streets to do the good work and show up. You do need to ask the people who need help, what do you require of me? Not in that, what does God require of me? That many of us kind of bristle against in that Christian sense. But what do you require of me to be a human, beloved member of this community? What do we require of each other? What allows us to be whole and holy together? For your people are my people. Your people are mine. What we truly need to understand is that so often oppression survives by making us separate, by telling us how we're different, how we're not connected. And the truly revolutionary act is to say we may not agree on everything, but we will be in community together. We will heal this world by our presence because your people are my people. Our people are our people. We're all from different communities and we want that difference. We don't want to be the same. I want to say that loudly and clearly. We do not want to be the same because the world is really ugly if we're all the same. It's a miraculous thing, all of our difference. And we are still of one another. And you're divine, my divine. You're divine, my divine. Whatever that means to you. If the most divine thing for you is family, what are the many ways that people experience family in this world? If the most divine thing for you is science, there's 101 ways to do science in this world. Believe it or not, there isn't just one. And there's all kinds of creative and important work to do around that. If the most sacred thing for you, the most divine thing for you is God, how does that manifest? All the ways in which we experience divinity, whatever that means for us, is how we find connection and wholeness. For in our brokenness and wholeness, we find that we are deeply connected and that all things are possible when we work together. So may you do unto others as they would have you do unto them. May you reach out. May you go into the uncomfortable places. May you go into the unknown where there be dragons who might become your friends. May you be blessed and holy in this day and all the days to come. For you are my people and I am yours. Blessed be and amen. And now Michael Stengel will extinguish our chalice.
We will now extinguish our chalices as we say our words of affirmation. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts and out into the world until we are together again. Our closing hymn is There's a River Flowing in My Soul.
So, friends, we go out into this week sharing our wisdom and our light and our lives. We go out into a world that knows not how to create justice on its own, but through the commitment and presence of so many activists, so many hearts and minds and souls and spirits who connect themselves, we find a way forward. We find that we practice here at church what it means to be human, because what the world needs is people who know how to be human. So go out into the world, share your wisdom, be that light, go into the unknown and embrace it. For what we need from you is your most holy and sacred yes. That calling from your spirit that says, I am here to live, I am here for it. And when you're too tired, take a break. Nobody is here for the long run. But when you're ready, take up that baton and run, my friends. Be out in the world and celebrate life. For you are whole, you are holy and wholly loved. Blessed be. Amen.